The European Union will allocate €1.6 billion in aid to Palestinians living in the West Bank and the Gaza Strip, as announced on April 14 by EU High Representative for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy Kaja Kallas. The funds will be invested in essential infrastructure while also providing humanitarian assistance and support for refugees. However, the question remains: will this aid actually reach civilians in the Gaza Strip? This week, Israel's Defense Minister Israel Katz stated that Israel will continue to block humanitarian aid deliveries to Gaza until Hamas is completely defeated. We'll take a closer look at how the situation is unfolding in the Middle East's most volatile hotspot in our next report. The idea of two-state solution as a path to resolving the conflict in Gaza now appears increasingly out of reach. Israel has no intention of withdrawing its forces from the Gaza Strip and has announced plans for military control over all Palestinian territories it has seized. According to Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz, the army will remain in the occupied security zones as a buffer between hostile militants and Israel, quote, in any temporary or permanent reality. This also applies to the territories seized in Lebanon and Syria. On Wednesday, April 16, Katz and Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu visited northern Gaza and received a security briefing from regional commanders on the military's ongoing efforts to free hostages and defeat Hamas in Gaza.
I am here together with the Prime Minister, with my commanders and IDF soldiers, who are doing an amazing job. This outpost we are on, it dominates Gaza, strikes at the heads of the terrorists, damages the terror infrastructure, at the same time protects the Israeli communities. This is the way we do it, and these are our lessons. We will never allow this kind of enemy to threaten our communities and our citizens.
Israel's military leadership has confirmed it will continue to block humanitarian aid deliveries into Gaza, calling it a critical level of pressure on Hamas. The decision has drawn sharp criticism from the United Nations, who describe it as a policy that risks amounting to collective punishment or even genocide against Palestinians. According to UN estimates, Israel currently controls 70% of the Gaza Strip, and the aid blockade has now lasted more than 6 weeks. Residents are facing severe shortages of clean water, food and medicine. The UN has warned that Gaza is entering its worst humanitarian crisis since the conflict with Hamas escalated in October 2023.
The Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs warns that the humanitarian situation is now likely to be the worst it has been in the 18 months since the outbreak of hostilities. It has now been a month and a half since any supplies were allowed through the crossings into Gaza, by far the longest such halt to date. Humanitarian aid should be above any sort of political decisions, and I think there have been Security Council resolutions, and I think we've been very clear on the fact that humanitarian aid should be freely accessible.
Meanwhile, relatives of hostages held by Hamas have expressed growing frustration with Israel's current strategy in Gaza. Family members and weekly demonstrators in Tel Aviv are urging Prime Minister Netanyahu's government to reach a deal with Hamas to secure the hostages' release, even if that means withdrawing from Gaza and halting the war. According to Israeli intelligence, 24 hostages are still believed to be alive, held in Hamas' underground tunnel network, along with the dead bodies of 35 others.
This night we decided to be here to express our solidarity and support for the families of the hostages that are in slavery, in captivity in Gaza for a year and a half now. It's the second Passover they are not with their loved ones, with their families.
On April 18, Hamas announced its readiness to begin negotiations for the release of all Israeli hostages in exchange for a full ceasefire in the Gaza Strip. The terrorist group is also demanding the release of a number of Palestinian prisoners, an end to the blockade to allow humanitarian aid deliveries, and the complete withdrawal of Israeli forces from the enclave. Previously, Hamas rejected an Israeli proposal to release 10 hostages in return for a 45-day pause in fighting.
استعداد الحركة للبدء الفوري في
Hamas movement is ready to immediately negotiate a deal to swap all hostages with an agreed number of Palestinians jailed by Israel, to end completely the war against our people and fully withdraw from Gaza Strip and to start the reconstruction in Gaza.
It remains unclear how Israel will respond to the Hamas public offer. Until now, Prime Minister Netanyahu has resisted any negotiations on a full ceasefire without the total defeat of Hamas. On March 18, Israel resumed its military operations, launching renewed strikes on densely populated areas of Gaza. The clock is ticking not only for the hostages, but also for Palestinian civilians, as the death toll continues to rise.
I ask the Arab countries and the Arab peoples to take action. We are being slaughtered. There is no food, no water. Massacres are happening right next to each other. My brother there, maybe last year in the same place, his house, 11 martyrs. They hit him, his wife and kids. My son here, my brother there, 11 martyrs.
According to the Gaza Health Ministry, which is controlled by Hamas, more than 51,000 Palestinians have been killed since the start of the Israeli offensive. The ministry does not provide a breakdown between civilians and combatants, but reports that most of the casualties are women and children. Israel, for its part, says it has killed around 20,000 Hamas fighters in response to the October 7 attacks. However, no independent verification of the figure has been provided. Daurin Asagulov, New Time.